Real quick before we get started, I just wanted to mention that John Bublitz has submitted his resignation, so he is no longer going to be with us. JJ, I don't know if you guys have started the process of finding someone else or not, but.
Yes, we did. We had, given the recruitment we did for the position just a few short months ago, we reached out to the 2 finalists we had before John ultimately got it, and we're going to broaden that a little bit, but based on that recruitment and posting the job, we're looking to move quick.
Okay. Thanks, JJ. Okay, so this hour 6 o'clock having arrived, I'd like to call the Public Works, Properties, and Sustainability Committee to order. As a first order of business, second order of business, we have a quorum. Agenda was properly posted. Number 3, public appearances, public opportunity to speak. Is there anyone from the public in the building or online who would like to say anything? Nobody would like to speak. Okay, number 4, discuss and consider the minutes from the Public Works, Properties, and Sustainability Committee meeting from April 11th, 2024.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
I'll second. Jim?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. Number 5, unfinished business. Presentation of draft bike and pedestrian comprehensive plan for feedback. JJ.
All right. I will be brief, but I would be willing to talk about this all night, so it's up to the committee. There's a memo in there. Essentially, as this committee knows, this plan has been on and off the back burner for nearly 2 years. And originally the scope was much larger, and after some feedback from this group and then some other interested, a couple of trustees and a couple of different interested folks, we winnowed it down to a much more streamlined guiding vision. And John and I, a few weeks back, in particular, worked on the particular projects to be considered in the project plan. Additionally, there was previously a chapter on applying for bike-friendly community recognition from the league. It's become pretty clear that most likely we wouldn't even be able to get an application in time this year, and quite frankly, we would not do very well. The league will give you guidance on how to get there, and so there's value in it, but at this point, we're not ready. And that coincided really nicely with me crafting this memo with an opportunity to partner with the MPO, which is a separate item we can discuss. So if we'd like to go through the bike ped plan, I can share my screen, but really the biggest piece that's changed since the last time this group saw it was we removed the bike-friendly pieces. And sorry, I cannot do 2 things at once. Let's see. All right. So the chapters are essentially the same. We've got the guiding vision, existing conditions, what we did with the survey, and identifying our gaps, kind of a policy recommendation that's really just taking a look with Complete Streets lens on anything we do, education and outreach things we can do, and then the project plan is the biggest piece that's here. Unless anybody had any comment, if you had time to look at it, none of that, like I said, none of that's really changed. The economic benefits, public health, environmental, social justice, safety, our existing conditions. We're in great shape sidewalk-wise versus other comparable communities. We're pretty darn close on having off-street bike paths that can move you largely through north and south and close to east and west. Public outreach, that's the one page I think. We got kind of a pretty look to it. This is what the plan could look like ultimately, when it's finished. Hopefully, depending on what we hear tonight, we could wrap this up and have it for a final recommendation at the next meeting. Survey results, we could reactivate this. It's still ongoing, but we could really make another push and have people contribute areas they need improvements throughout the village. Identifying those gaps, but this is the piece I did want to discuss with this committee the most, was the project plan. Essentially, it would likely be easiest to go to this, which would be included as an appendix, basically in the plan ultimately. At this point, Strand has gotten me dollar cost estimates after conversations with their team in 2025 dollars. The only two staff recommended years are the projects that are currently or will soon be in design and are already in the plan for next year. Otherwise, I could put recommended years, but the village has a lot of needs. A lot of these could kind of be seen as wants. They're not necessarily failing pavement. They're not necessarily, so on the years recommended, I'd be looking to this committee for recommendations and ultimately the village board throughout the summer and budget talks. But if there's nothing at this point anybody wants to talk about, we can talk about these briefly, or Josh, we could even pull up the aerial and go through them. I believe it was Nick that kind of brought up how we don't have a plan for making these connections. We were talking about West Oak and West Lawn and the path and how they just kind of don't complete everywhere. So I think John and I sat down for hours looking at the whole village and put every project we think for however many years or decades it may take would give us a holistic, complete streets everywhere connection for all users. So, all right, then I might.
JJ's, real quick, is there a lot, I mean, you've got first couple projects kind of slated here, proposed. Is there a logic to this as far as connectivity or maybe more areas where we think we'd have more traffic, maybe where we have safety concerns that this would help? That's kind of what I would think from a village board perspective we want to see is, okay, we do this section, the next logical section would be this one. And this is an area that's concerning safety-wise, so maybe it has to go prior to that one. Those types of things, you know, that's where I would see, you know, your expertise, you know, certainly Strand and others, in kind of formulating that. And then, well, you're right, we'll have to figure out the dollars and how this stacks in with the priorities of the rest of that are coming through for the village. But these are popular means of getting places. I can see it in my backyard every day.
Yep.
On one little section that was completed a couple of years ago in Community Park, and people love it.
Yep.
And you know, I'd certainly love to see that one connect right through back to you know, Cottage Road at some point, and that would, you know, kind of cross again. Another thing we say, how do we connect, you know, people moving pieces to what makes sense from that perspective.
I do.
Does
I
that
mean,
help?
yeah. I think I would have a staff recommend. I know full well that we can't do all these at once, but I think, John, you're right. We could easily identify essentially that one, make that connection from community up to BB. Basically, we had talked about either continuing the path down West Oak or bringing it down West Lawn. We determined, I think we talked a little, John Bublitz and I talked, that it makes the most sense to bring it down West Lawn. There's only a few driveways on that east side, convert that sidewalk to path, do some kind of a safe crossing right there across BB, connect right there, and that gets you into the community path. So those two, you know, path right there and a crossing of BB would be a huge piece.
Yeah.
When you come down Oak, you come right across, you're in the community park, and once you're over there, you're in the neighborhood, you're kind of off the main corridors. It's a, and then from what we saw, and we're already working on converting the sidewalk from Southern Grange to right over here. And then I think from what we heard in the surveys and we hear anecdotally from folks, and it does make sense, crossing BB and crossing N, while they're not saying, we don't have dangerous spots. We don't have that kind of crash data and injury data, which is great, but it's perception, and crossing N anywhere is perceived. So you could basically identify these intersection improvements, and the scope of what they'll look like would be designed and discussed, but of Parkview, North Lawn, doing something maybe different at the signalized school road. I know when we started that project or started talking about it, it was driven by traffic at the time. Now with all the residential and all the people want to get back and forth across N, we could tighten that up or do something with the signals. So I think you identify those intersection projects. And then the biggest piece is maybe doing something else. BBU's identified too, and that's a bigger challenge here. A pie in the sky project is some kind of what those college kids looked at almost a year ago now, with a road diet or some kind of reduction from 4 lanes to 2 with twiddles in the middle and safe crossing islands and that kind of thing. But that's an expensive big number. So maybe something else. At BB's a little more challenging, I think, because besides at Southern Grange we did something, or at West Lawn with the path, then you might have a long stretch where people don't have a nice safe crossing. So we could try and identify something there that might be feasible without being the huge price tag. I think at that point you've got an off-street network, and then any new development that comes in, we've been doing paths everywhere, making sure that connectivity continues. So I think that's reasonable. That could probably be completed in the budget in my lifetime. So,
But John, I guess what you're getting to is maybe we don't put a year on it, but maybe we put a hierarchy
Yep.
on it, and we just maybe hierarchy, like what are the steps? Like if we had the funds, these first few we should knock off, and if we have more funds, it's these to make this connection. So maybe there's a ranking somehow of these that kind of puts them in an order. Like you have this that separates them out from path and sidewalk and road construction, but then maybe there's like a second sheet, JJ, we can work on that just doesn't rank the year of them, but ranks probably which one should come first. That's what you're looking for, John.
Yeah, I
Maybe
think
some
that's
of
helpful for
the decision
anybody
making.
that would look at this report to
Yeah.
say, okay, that makes sense to me. I can see the logic in that.
You kind of did that.
And yeah, stay away from the year, just, prioritize and what's logically next, or what's a priority because of safety or whatever reason. Or if we're redoing big section of N with the county, what makes
Yeah,
sense
then what do
to
you do?
do in conjunction with that to save money? And be smart about it, if you're gonna narrow the road or whatever, try to make it safe, particularly down by where the kids get on, back on beyond the railroad tracks there, where we've had issues occasionally. No, those things make logical sense to me.
Yep.
Would you
Yeah, I like this idea of this segregated list for different types of projects, and I think we can revisit that at least annually as we choose to add more projects to it, as well as reprioritize annually based on what happens in the budget.
Do you think you still would put the cost, or do you would you
Well,
not want to
maybe not here,
that
yeah.
every year? Or you could do what Google does and just put like $1 sign through $4 signs for. price for a
Actually,
restaurant or
that's probably perfect for for this plan to be more
It's
high
not- it's
level.
not a
I
bad
like that
idea.
idea,
Yeah.
actually.
Like, which
Uh-huh.
it just at least gives you an idea of what costs more than the
Yep.
other things,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yep.
this is probably the most
And that way
economical,
yeah,
but
and you don't
yep.
have to have a huge number, and you don't have to recalculate it
Right.
every year.
that's a good point. I mean, you're gonna wanna kind of update your costs as you go along from a budgeting standpoint, but on something like this, you probably only need to know the severity of costs,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's high or low kind of thing
Mm-hmm.
in comparison.
Yep. I love that
The
idea.
dollar
actually.
signs, I
Yep.
like that.
To bike here, it's really gonna be expensive.
Yeah,
Walk
yeah.
here, it's gonna be expensive.
Any other feedback, and I know there's a lot here, and we haven't discussed many of these projects, some of them vaguely, some of them I'm sure none of you have ever even heard about. It's just been John or Brian and I, or John and I, and then we loop Josh and his team in, but any comments or anything you think is missing? And we can pull up an aerial and we can kind of talk high level real quick if you're interested in that, but I
I
do.
mean, as a general comment from my perspective, it's great to have a plan, but then what are we gonna do with it at the end of the day? So having something like that where you have, okay, in 25, we're looking at these couple projects. We're gonna run it by the village board, see how it fits in the overall plan. If maybe it won't be 25, maybe one will have to slip to 26 or 27 because of other priorities. Or maybe it's gonna be 25, and then this is logically kind of the order we're thinking, and, your dollar signs to kind of give people an idea of the cost. But it's wonderful to have this and be able to say, to particularly those people that are passionate about this, that yes, the village does have a plan, you know, we've done a number of things already, and these are the next things we're planning to do that, and this is the overall scope as of now, and we'll continue to revisit this every year, because things will change, and, you know, maybe because of a road that's got to be done or something else, we've had to flip the priorities. You know, there's logic in doing that. I don't know if anybody else has any comments.
I just had a very, very specific question.
Sorry, can you put your microphone on?
Oh, I'm sorry. I had a specific question. There's a bullet on here that says Vilas Road, railroad path, connection to Bockham Park. How would that happen? I mean, how do you do that?
It's not a railroad, probably bad description. We put that little piece of path between Southern Grange and Progress Drive. We're just gonna basically continue it along Vilas, off
Oh, on
the
Vilas.
street there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not go over the railroad.
It's just the
Yeah.
biggest piece in my head is crossing the railroad tracks.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I get it. And you're not gonna like build
No.
a bridge going over, yeah.
Is Heidi on? That was, Heidi wants a bridge there. But
Yeah.
That's gonna be a lot of dollar
Sounds
signs.
like super expensive, yeah,
Yep.
especially as high as railroad cars are.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, that one's complicated, and I don't know if I covered it enough in the narrative, but that's involving working with the town, a couple of property owners and different things, but we've already engaged a little bit.
Okay.
And the town seems open to it, so, because that's another one that, actually, I probably should have listed, John, just because of the sheer number of people that want that connection there.
Well, Bockham Park's so important. to
Yep.
So many people.
And it's easy to say you can bring the path from the other way, but that's
Yeah.
quite a ways if you're coming from,
Yeah.
you know, Yep.
Yeah, it's true, but,
Well, that's one it would be nice potentially to have a dollar value to, if development were to continue up Vilas towards the farm, et cetera, that's when you're certainly gonna wanna make that connection, if not sooner. I mean, I know from living right in this neighborhood adjacent to that, it would get used all the time if it
Yeah.
was there.
I agree.
Yep. And that one, while I didn't see any, there's no real data, that's one that I know makes people nervous. Just, you're on the nice path and you're like, oh, Progress Drive's big and nice and I can head up, but just to get onto Vilas right there at the tracks and the way cars come, and yeah, I can see that being a deterrent to people. Definitely, you're not gonna send your kids that way, so.
Right.
Well, if you don't like them.
That's the extra.
Jimmy, you can do it.
Well, just in the interest of, and we'll talk a little bit more on the next items there, but of admittedly a lot less of a scope than I envisioned a year and a half, 2 years ago now with this. Any other guidance on this, or what I'm hearing is, I'll clean up, I see a bunch of edits I still need to make, but the project narratives, maybe keep those in the plan. We'll have an appendix here that Josh and I can work on, the rankings and the cost. Then that can be the thing that we review annually and just kind of resubmit a new appendix to this plan. Anything else in there that you'd like to see fleshed out more, some more to it, besides adding some pretty pictures and making it look like an actual document?
I'm assuming this is also, I don't think, I would say, yeah, clean it up and let's get ready and prove it. But I would also assume this would position us well for when you do want to submit for a grant or whatever, saying,
that's
hey, by the way, we do have a plan, and this situates us maybe slightly above another community that may not have one.
That's why I wanted to get the projects all in front of this committee and then eventually the board, get it approved and have it, whether I like it and it's what I wanted, 2 years ago or not. Yes, because that's just something you submit with grant applications and then, along with whatever's approved in the FMP by the village board.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah, depending on how conversations go with the next couple things, or maybe we'll someday get the big, beautiful plan that I envisioned originally.
Got to start from somewhere.
Yep.
Any other discussion? Got what you need, JJ?
I do. Thank you.
All right, so moving on to item 6, new business. A, discuss and consider recommending participation in the Metropolitan Planning Organization's application to the Safe Streets for All grant application.
Okay, memo in your packet. Colleen and Alex from the MPO reached out to Aaron and I. They think they want to go after some of this money from the bipartisan infrastructure law. It's primarily, again, to your point, John, we don't have projects ready or identified necessarily, and those are really competitive. For planning and demonstration type projects, they think they have a really good shot at getting this money. They needed at least 2 communities to sign on. I think this would be great for the village. We had 2 meetings with them and discussed essentially, I ultimately got to the point where I was just asking what dollar amount am I gonna need to tell our village board? And we settled on 30,000 at the absolute high end, most likely late 25, possibly even into early 26. Essentially, the MPO will administer the grant, but we'll have control. We can put out our own RFP, select our own consultant, what we want to see in the planning process, and then it's our project. They just basically handle the grant administration, so we do have some administrative costs for them, but she estimated a few $1,000s, and just the few grants we've dealt with here, that's a bargain. We should definitely let them administer the grant. And so I asked, you know, I gave them some examples of plans I liked. I really love Sun Prairies. They just did their active transportation plan. I believe it's final approval in '23. They reached out to their city engineer. I think theirs came in at just under 100,000 total. So essentially that would be a 20% match. We'd be on the hook for 20,000 plus the cost of the MPO. That's why I put the 30,000. Most likely our plan wouldn't cost that much because we just aren't as big as Sun Prairie, wouldn't have that same scope. But I mean, and then I did consider putting their plan in our packet, but that just didn't feel right. But I do want to just kind of give you an idea of, again, 2 things at once. Cannot do it. And I can email this out if anybody's actually interested, but I just want to, just the scope of what they did, what went into it, and ultimately it does land with the same type of thing, a project plan, and you know how you prioritize things and the best practices, but it is, just get, it looks like the work they did, background, community outreach, getting input and feedback, collecting data. They just, when you have a firm take this on and do it for you, you really get a comprehensive look at your whole community. So ours was, I don't know, just over a dozen pages, 20 pages, or whatever. This is, 80 pages of comprehensive active transportation, looking holistically at all roadway and path and sidewalk users for all the future. So I would envision we could participate in the grant. If awarded to the MPO, we get to put out our own RFP and have our own version of an active transportation plan like this. So then, future years when we're submitting for these grants, we're demonstrating that we're serious about this, and this is what our community values and projects we want to implement. So it can also incorporate things like we could continue to work with the school. Lisa and I meet with them a couple times a year, and you can incorporate safe routes to school as part of this plan. It can be whatever we want it to be, but what they need at this point is a resolution of support. So essentially, I was hoping this committee would recommend to our village board that they resolve to dedicate $30,000 in the '25 budget should the award be granted to the MPO and we could participate.
I'll make a motion to do so.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. Moving on to number 7, engineers report.
Okay, a little bit on the development side. Shady Grove subdivision has submitted their land disturbance permit. They have just a surety and bond kind of situation that they have to kind of put into play for their extra work out there on that kind of northern part where they're gonna be doing some of, splitting those lots into kind of more duplex sort of lots. They should be starting here, I would think shortly. Their permit allows them to start here already this month if they get their stuff in a row. So you'll see some activity out there in Shady Grove. West Lawn States 5th edition, still talking through some of that. We know the lift station stuff has been approved and sent into the DNR, and then also just kind of working through the sixth edition of what's going to come later on with the Hamburg team there. Heyday, we are still waiting for their comeback with as far as the second submittal, the PIP submittal of that. The GDP went through, so we're waiting on the PIP. We're also in talks with the county along BB for a jurisdictional transfer potentially of that roadway, so that we can deal with some of the access and take over some ownership of that roadway at the same time. So there's a little bit of all of that going on at the same time. The developer's still working with the county because it is their roadway on access, and they are doing a traffic study to show of what that access would look like. We're talking about fundamental way and how that connects in, and whether that would be a right in, right out, or they'd have a little bit more access at that location, because it would really, add to better access to the future library site or some of the other business that's right there now in the corner, and to their development overall. So more to come on that, probably within the next month or so. I would say we'd have a better report on that. Foundation Dance Studio is broke ground, is under construction. Cottage Grove Retail, which is next to New Tech, they have presented their plan to Plan Commission and have to come back with a few changes, but theirs is looking pretty good too. So all of that's moving pretty fast up in that corridor up there. You're probably realizing that a lot of construction's happening right along Cottage Grove, road there. It's pretty nice to see. Also, Hamburg, as Andrew's come forward on Limerick Drive to extend some of that plat. What is the plat called, JJ? I can't think of the Cooley, right?
Coil South.
Yeah, Coil South addition there. So that's pretty exciting. The farm interceptor, may mean more also in the near future if that development takes off. So there's kind of a lot of development happening right along that corridor. Still, we're still planning on hearing more from Alliant Energy behind Piggly Wiggly. It's kind of stalled out a little bit, but I still think they're actively looking at that site. As far as the 2024 streets projects and the paving of the parking lots, we're working through the contract documents with them right now on that. They've kind of told us that it could start as early as early June and as late June. So they haven't actually pinned down when they want to start. We will know more near the end of this month. We plan on reaching out and having a little bit of a public involvement here in May, which we have to set up still, JJ, with some of the residents, once we kind of understand the timeline of the contractor a little bit better. So a couple other things I wanted to talk about tonight, and they were on JJ's list, and I'd like to just walk through them quickly, are those 225 projects, only because we've talked to staff, and at some point later in this year, late summer and early fall, we need to start considering design and getting those projects ready. So I'm going to share my screen with everybody here and just talk through them just with Google to understand what the projects are and maybe what the expectations of this committee are at those locations. So the first location is, I'm having a problem driving out too, JJ. Wellbridge and Taylor in North Main. This was an intersection improvement. The thoughts there were we were gonna kind of do some streetscaping and some bump outs to kind of narrow the crossings. So you have parking along Main Street, right? On either side of the intersection you have parking. The idea would be we'd have some bump outs. If you could see my cursor there, it's kind of hard to see, but bump out into that parking on either side. So you shorten this crossing, kind of narrow that width. Bump outs on all four corners is what we were thinking. There was some discussion about when we were talking to JJ and John, is it just the north or do we have it on all four corners? I tend to like it on all four corners because it kind of it helps the speed control throughout that intersection a little bit more. And then where would the main crossing be? As you can see, that the main crossing right now seems to be to the north, where a lot of the active crossing happens, but we also want to make sure that there's something to the south and probably paint that, because that, when you work yourself down Taylor, that's the only place where sidewalk is on that side. So in my mind, it's bump outs on all four corners, crosswalks all the way around, and if we were to add an RRFB, maybe we add it on the north side and promote that as kind of, if you want to push a button to get across, you don't necessarily have to have 4 of them here. You could just have 2 on kind of one side. Just high-level thoughts right now. Does anybody have any opinion on that, I guess, moving forward?
North side is where the current crossing is.
Yeah, you can cross. There's nothing stopping you over here from crossing, but we aren't promoting it, right? The ramps, if we were to promote that crossing, we'd have a ramp, set up differently to come this direction, and it would line better you know, with the sidewalk over here. I think there may be some people that are active walkers that are confident, that maybe are walking on the sidewalk on the south side and just crossing, even without a marked crosswalk, right? I mean, yeah. But right now, we're promoting that north crossing as being the one, because there is actual ramps there, and you could, you know, it is a short crossing across the road. We'd probably keep that as a prominent one, I'm thinking, with some RFBs, because the school's to the north, so I think most pedestrians and kids want to go north first and maybe cross there, but, you know.
That one,
Just
that's
as
logical.
you're leaving, as you're going on Taylor going west.
Sorry, can you
know,
turn
we've
your
got-
mic on?
We've got the, oh, I'm sorry. As you're going west on Taylor, approaching the intersection, you've got the right turn lane, the lane that goes straight and left, and then the oncoming lane. If you put a bump out on both sides, I'm not sure if you have room to do all that, right?
Yeah, it's
So
gonna be a
you're
little
just gonna
tricky.
choke it, right?
It's gonna be a little tricky on that corner.
Yeah,
I
I
agree.
mean, I don't know. That would be my only concern about that.
And we've talked a little bit about, there's that right only, right? And we
Uh-huh.
have the bike lane in there now too, so it's taking up space.
Yeah.
And that wasn't always marked maybe that
No.
way, so now you have kind of a wide intersection, and what does that look like? You know, we might not be able to bump out here, but maybe
Uh-huh.
we can still bump out on Main a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? So maybe we're gonna have to stay flush on this side.
I think
And
so.
then bring it back, but also make sure that a truck can turn there too, because the truck will now be tied up against the curb on that side. So the bump
Right.
out on that one corner may not be as large as the other ones, but you could still get maybe something there, a little bit of one,
Uh-huh.
to kind of shorten that crossing. That's a great point.
Yeah.
We talked about that.
Okay.
I think, I drive this, we both drive this a lot,
Yeah.
and I think primarily you're right. The kids seem to cross, if they're coming from the west side of Maine, they cross Wheeled Bridge
Hmm.
and cross in on the north side.
On the north side.
Seems to be the primary.
Yep.
And I think the crossing guard stays on the north side.
Yeah.
So I think the bump out, like you got your every cursor kind of in that, I think it'd be difficult to put it on Taylor. I don't,
Yeah.
like you said, because when I swing out and go north, I mean, I'm almost into the oncoming lane
Yeah.
sometimes,
Yeah.
just to make it through, if I'm pulling something especially.
Yeah.
When you're pulling it is probably more of a concern, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that'd be, you know, I'm in favor of doing something like that, because it's you're coming downhill, it's just there's a lot going on there. You've got kids crossing, and for the driver, I'm thinking it's something that gives them the pedestrians more time to kind of think before they cross, but also the driver to kind of draw attention to it.
Right.
And we had the same conversation, and basically most likely growth is gonna happen out that way sooner rather than later. So we know we don't wanna be even considering taking away the right turn lane. But now, and I'm just spitballing here, but when you showed it with the bike lane, could we do a little bit of a bump out, and then the bike lane becomes kind of a shared, or, you know, we were talking
could do
about,
more of a
since the
shared
path's there,
use.
we're gonna have we're gonna maybe go with some different paint to identify it. I'm thinking of the different things I've seen in Madison over the
Yep.
years, but
Yeah, we'll have to
something
look
that's
at
like,
some
all right, you
stuff.
guys get together, you know, work
Yep.
together now, bike and
Yeah.
right turning vehicles, and then it allows a little bit of a bump out that can still be, and I don't know that, I mean, once you actually start measuring this out, that's probably not feasible,
We'll
but
have to look, and we might have to restripe a little bit right on that side, but, yeah. But
'Cause it-
JJ's right, you know, first thought was, let's just get rid of the right turn. Probably the traffic today could get by without that right turn, but as soon as you start to develop out there, we all know there's not a real good north-south connection as you develop out there to let people go north, right, up to Cottage Grove Road or a different direction. So a lot of people will still continue to come this way. I think you're gonna want to right, even if you need it probably now, but it's probably not something that you desperately need. You will in the future.
I don't know what's going on out there, but there's no way you cannot have a north road if they were to develop in that direction.
I agree.
Absolutely no way.
At some point, you have to have something that makes
Before it's
it
even, I mean, it was already a preliminary approval dictated, 15 years ago, that it couldn't go through unless there was a roadway to the north. The developer could never get a roadway to the north, so
And there's a property owner that just was
Right.
adamantly against it, and then they tried to go through the school forest, exchanging some land, and that fell apart,
fell
because the
apart too. Yeah.
board said no, yeah, school board, right.
yes, correct, yeah. So, you know, the key to get west, where everybody will be going, is gonna be, you're gonna have to go all the way up to Ridge Road and turn around and come back in. It's not gonna work. So,
Yeah, I like the idea of keeping both those, that right turn as well as the straight left lane up there for right now. And Josh, I guess my thought process on that wider, bigger radius turning going to the north would be maybe that crosswalk needs to shift north by 20
yeah,
feet.
I was thinking the
Yeah.
same.
Could do, it gives you a big wide turn radius and still gets you a safe protected crosswalk. So I guess I'd agree. I'd like Strand to spend some time and come back to us with what their opinion is after they studied a little bit as to how we could do all 4 bump outs and keep traffic moving in its current configuration.
Right. No, that's a good point, Mike. We were thinking the same thing, is we might have to push this crosswalk a little further north to get it away from that turn radius.
That is one, and I can't remember if it's been here recently, but that right turns in general, and when I'm driving too, everybody's guilty of it, you're looking to see when can I turn right.
Yep.
If
You're
we can get
missing-
that crosswalk just a little bit
you're
further
missing it.
north, for sure,
Yep.
yeah. Yep, you're not looking,
Yeah, you're looking left to see when you can
Yep.
turn right, and somebody's crossing on your right, so you don't see them until you've already made your move. And then they're there, right on top, you're on top
Yeah,
of them.
it's hard to say. I mean, we've done a pretty good job, I think, as you go, really hammering on this intersection, but as you are heading kind of north on Main Street off of Taylor, you can see the speed limit sign thing blocking, you got the big tree, there's a lot that, and then, like you said, if I'm parked going left and the car's looking, it's just, there's too much to go on there. It's a tough intersection, but, so anyway, I don't want to belabor the point, but I think, yeah, looking north on that crossing walk, moving it north might be a good idea.
Yeah. Yep, because you're looking and there's traffic here, right? So you really got to kind of sometimes watch the traffic, especially during peak times, and sometimes there's walkers during the peak times too, right? So you're looking downstream, and you're turning to go uphill, so you tend to accelerate a little bit. And yeah, there could be a walker right in the crosswalk. So it's something I think we need to look at and bring back to the committee. JJ and I just wanted to make sure you guys kind of understood we were going to start to look at this. Did you have any thoughts? It seems like some of the same thoughts you're having is the same kind of conversations JJ and our team was having a little bit, so that's good. Should we go on to the other one? Sure. Yeah, okay, let's look at the other one real quick. So the other one, and JJ talked about that a little bit in his bike plan, it was at South Grange, we have that crosswalk we have the path on the west side of the road, and then it goes to a sidewalk, right? If you were going to head east, it's a sidewalk all the rest of the way until you get to the big intersection, right, with N. But there's a multi-use path on the other side that runs nice north-south now, right? So this is that missing link, kind of a main missing link along 2 of your pretty main thoroughfares for traffic, for commercial, for everything else that's going along there. So the idea would be is we need to take the sidewalk out, we need to put a path there, right? And it seems simple when JJ just said, we're just gonna put a path there. And I said, that's great, let's look at it. We obviously have power there, right? We have power that's probably throughout this corridor in the way of the path that will have to be relocated or potentially asked to go underground, right? I mean, this is a nice commercial corridor, a nice looking corridor along this route that we probably would have that same ask to the utility company. And JJ, you've had some conversations with them about this, but that was one thing we wanted to touch on with them first is, hey, this path's likely gonna disrupt you. You're gonna be asked to relocate. Maybe at the same time, can we talk about undergrounding? And JJ's been having some of those conversations.
yep, we've started them. Seems promising, but I don't want to say anything yet until I know for sure. I don't want to get anybody's hopes up, so.
Yep.
More to come.
At this point, they understand, like, yep, we get that we will be impacted, which is good. So as you go along the corridor, the right-of-way is sitting out kind of where the sidewalk is, but there's points of where obviously the sidewalk comes in because we get into some low areas or some culverts need to be extended. Maybe some slight wetland impacts, but I'm hoping some of these are man-made because they're in existing ditches. But some culverts will have to be extended, not a real big deal. But remember, we are gonna try to, instead of just keeping the sidewalk here and moving the path, closer to the road. We want to get some separation from the vehicles. We want to get some snow storage, right? Because you're clearing off a main thoroughfare of a road, plus you want to clear off a 10-foot path. We want to make sure that's at that location. So trees become an issue a little further down here. And they're nicer oak trees. They were avoided with the sidewalk in the past. It appears to me they were, to some degree. But they are on your right-of-way. So we'll have some decisions. There's been some, I can't really get a good view of it. There's walls around some of it. As you go along this corridor, Power has been trimming them to some degree, and depending on what Power does, they may have some conflicts with some of the trees. But there's a section of this where there's some older oak trees that are in right-of-way, but will be in the direct conflict of the path without providing, without having any terrace at all here. So there'll be some decisions to be made on the trees at this location. And I don't know if there's any input or thoughts right off the bat on those trees.
Could you elevate the curb, go closer on those sections so you didn't have to take out the trees? Assuming that the power company doesn't need to remove them. The other thing is, you also have to look at the quality of the trees. Have they been beat up because of the sidewalk and other things? Sure. And so they may be nearing the end of their life, or are they, healthy?
Yep.
And that's another consideration. But I don't know if we've seen things like that, just so that whoever's walking there feels comfortable. If we were to do that, otherwise, I agree that they are in the way.
Yeah, so you're almost suggesting, John, and it's not a bad idea.
I'm just throwing something out.
It's not a bad idea, like maybe a barrier wall there of some sort that you'd see like on a bridge structure or something. It's just a concrete barrier wall, or that would be right behind the curb, but the path would be up to it, so you still have kind of that protection, because you will have a little faster, you feel like you're a little bit quicker on this corridor. Snow storage along that section would be a little interesting. If you couldn't snore directly there, you'd have to push it away.
Yeah.
A little bit, but it's not a real long stretch here. So, that's something you could look at. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, if those trees are healthy and the power company doesn't need to mess with them, it would be nice to leave them there. Mm-hmm. If we can come up with a solution that's certainly safe and effective. And if it's not a long section, which I don't think it is, you may be able to get away with something unique like that.
Yep.
And make it kind of cool.
Yep. Okay. That's a good thought.
It's my spitball for the night.
We may have other small, terrace trees maybe along the corridor that aren't real large, that maybe are, maybe would be better to, replant or have some new ones along here. But what I'm hearing, John, is, and it was our same thought, is maybe some older growth stuff. Well, let's see if we can try to save it. And if we have to make a few impacts with some corridor trees that are smaller that can be replaced, we can probably do that.
Yeah.
Right? That's probably fair. Access along here, we're going to have to work with the property owners at some point. We get to, most of these look like we have space that we can, the back of the walk is probably where the back of the path is going to be, and we have enough space to kind of go forward. But as you get a little bit closer over here to the intersection, right-of-way is back here further. We probably should push the path a little further away than where it is now, and we're gonna have to rethink maybe this corner.
Yeah.
And the parking and the access maybe along that corner, and how it all lays out and how vehicles circulate, but I think that can be done. It's just something we're gonna have to do.
We'll give you some free curb.
Yeah, right. And then obviously there's gonna be a major crossing that we're gonna have to revamp, right? Because this is only sidewalk type crossing. And the nose of the island, you're going to want to have some protection there for people to store in, just in case, you get somebody that kind of comes through and feels like they want a refuge there. Nothing's really wide, nothing's big. We've talked about there's no real protection. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get a good view. There's no real protection there because it's so short. This is a major intersection. If you've ever been on the intersection, everything's way back, right? It feels like you're way far apart from each other. So we're gonna have to look at some truck turns, but there may be a way you can extend some of these some of these bump outs a little further, the median a little further to provide a little bit better protection.
Up by Ferris Auto, that's gonna be a little interesting one too, because there's a hill and up into the parking lot, and there's not a lot of room there.
Where is Ferris Auto?
Ferris just skosh down from, so you got that.
Oh, yeah,
There
yeah.
are all the cars there.
Yep, all the cars there. So where their parking lot is, where they've got 8 or 9 cars there pointing out, that's
Yep.
where you have
Slope.
a slope, fairly significant slope.
Sure. Oops, I'm trying to drop my guy and it's not. Off of these guys here, right?
Yeah,
Yep, I see
that
that.
picture doesn't do it
It doesn't do it
justice.
justice, but I can tell there's a fairly good slope off this side, like almost like a 4-to-1 really. Or more maybe. Yep, I see it. So you may have, as you bring a path along there, and if it widens out or something, you may maybe put a small little retaining wall along the path side or something.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be real high, 2-3 feet or something that's
Yeah.
just short. Yep. It's good.
We do.
We do.
Yep.
Yep.
Could we do something with the cross section? We just kind of fixed this road, didn't we?
We did.
It isn't that many years ago. We just
I'm open to, let's have some
Yeah,
fun here. What do we got?
JJ'd love a little roadway diet or something on this thing, right? Yeah. There is some things you potentially could do. You could restripe. You could, I mean, it's hard to imagine, but this corridor is 4 lanes. It handles a lot of traffic, but I bet you a 3-lane section works just fine. I see a lot of communities go back to a 3-lane section. What I mean by that is you have the center turn lane, right? It's painted yellow and it's 14 feet or so in the middle. You have 2 lanes, then usually you do a buffered bike lane so you feel a lot more safe, right? You have 3 or 4, 2 minimum, up to 3 or 4 feet of like a buffered striped lane and then a nice wide bike lane.
Yeah.
People would feel a lot more comfortable riding on that than they would in something like this. Not to say an avid cyclist won't ride on this, but people would shy away if they're not avid cyclists and they'd love to use that path instead, right? When there's 4 lanes and it's a tighter bike lane.
Yeah. No, what I see, it's peak times, of course, it's busy, but what it seems like is you have 1 lane where somebody's driving the speed limit and 1 lane where somebody's driving 35 miles an
Yes,
hour.
Yeah.
If you had one, would it change? Maybe you'd balance out the speeds, actually, right?
You kind of balance a little bit more. The people that are going slow feel a little pressure. The people that are going fast have to slow down. And it maybe it's not bad if everybody goes 35, right, instead of 40 or whatever else, right? So sometimes people don't mind it. to
Well,
slow
if
it
you
all
have
down.
a dedicated lane for pedestrian bike
Yeah.
traffic, right,
Yep.
then they feel safe walking it,
safer.
and the other people, yeah, like you say, maybe 35 isn't the worst, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
It just takes you a little bit longer to go through the corridor, but it's not actually a major traffic delay, right? You lose a minute or so.
is there something, I'm not picking on this business, but they drop off cars and the delivery guy hogs up that right lane, and it concerns me because it's just a big car carrier with no flashing anything. And I don't know if there's a way that we can somehow maneuver it so that he has another point to deliver off of Cottage Grove Road.
So he parks there while he takes them off.
Yeah.
Because he can't get into the parking lot, I'm
Yeah.
assuming, right?
I've
Has anybody ever said, we'd like you to pull onto the side street, take them off here, and then just pull them across?
Last time I talked to him, it's been a few years now. It was more of a, don't come at these times, the peak times, morning and afternoon, and get some cones out there and
Yeah.
do it right. The
Yep.
traffic could handle it. People, if you had a sign up, people would change the lane and be fine. It sounds like maybe they need a reminder again. That's the only thing. If they don't do it at the wrong time, which typically fine. Like if our guys are checking something, they'll just pull over in that lane with the flashes on, and it's, as long as it's not rush hour.
Yeah, I don't want to try to make it difficult for him to run his business, but it's just like, it just concerns me when I see that big truck parked there
Yep.
with no warning or anything.
No, and that was the initial, however many years ago it was first brought to my attention. I reached out to the owners there, and at least for a while it seemed to get better, but maybe another call over there. But yeah, someday, eventually we're growing. They're gonna have to find another way if they're still there, that, you can't just stop a truck there.
Yeah, they probably side street.
Outlet of that business, or is there an outlet on the body, or not?
There looks like there's.
It's not theirs, I
Is
don't
this in
think.
shared access, JJ, on this
I
side?
don't know
or-
what's shared with ownership technically, but I know I've driven through that way.
Yeah, they have a gate on their
Is
fencing
that, is that the
there.
gate there? That's
Yeah.
a gate.
Okay.
They do run cars up through there.
Sure. Yeah, it looks like there's a gate, right?
Yeah.
Not a
Well,
real
it makes
wide,
sen-
but something.
Makes sense, because they want to keep people from, because those are a lot of cars there.
Yeah. Yeah, so as far as like this project, probably wouldn't address or deal with that, JJ, unless, I can't think of anything like, besides tell them to go to like a side street or better traffic control when they drop off. I mean, they gotta drive them off of there, right? So
Yep.
I'm surprised they don't wanna pull onto a side street. You know, but maybe they don't want to because like on Ole here, they block a bunch of entrances right off the bat, right? Like unless they pull further down, and then I was thinking, can they pull on Crawford, but you have the gas station, there's a lot of in and out right here, right? So they'd have to pull further up, but it's, you know, and find a spot where they're not blocking an access.
That
and
was
then
my
drive
thinking
across.
years back
In
was,
thinking,
yeah,
in thinking like a truck driver, it's more likely that he doesn't want to have to drive all the way down Ollie when he's done and try to navigate
Yeah,
on Well Bridge and then
Yep.
back
Yep.
out on the end with his long truck.
yep, I would agree.
yep.
There you go.
You know, they don't want to go all the way down to Weld Bridge and back up and around, right? Because as soon as they turn on these side streets, and Mike, you're pointing out a really good point, is they don't turn around, they got to find their way out the other, you know, the other direction, and
Our cars can,
yep, and all of a sudden the local streets get a little tight and they can't make a turn and they get frustrated. And they could go up to Oak, I suppose. and then-
Yeah, I don't think we gotta solve the problem, just maybe education and reinforcement and just highlighting it.
So is there anything specific, you know, with this path that maybe I didn't cover, or some other thoughts? Again, we're in the real preliminary stages of starting to lay some stuff out, having some discussions with the power, probably some of the property owners are looking at those trees, you know, Forrester probably look at those trees to see what kind of health they're in. These two projects are 25 projects, so it's not like we have to start working on them tomorrow, but later in this year, we need to start thinking about them and get them planned so that if we are gonna do them, we're ready for good bidding right away after the first of the year.
I guess my input would be that, kind of stay the course on what you're doing and not try to do it on road with just paint. I like the off the road better for pedestrian and for bike, you know, as a connector.
I don't think there was anything else, JJ, that we wanted to, any other little things we wanted to talk about with this group as far as constraints on this corridor?
I think it was those two spots and then the intersection.
Yep, and then John pointed out the retaining wall, which is good.
The intersection, is the school concerned about it, right? I'm talking about Taylor, Wheel Bridge, and I'm sorry.
The school, not currently. The crossing guards at different times have been,
Okay.
and anecdotally, different parents at times. For a very short time, we lost a crossing guard there.
Yeah.
And admittedly, that was worrisome for some parents. That made sense. So this is where, yeah, Lisa and I like to plan these projects as we can, worst case scenario, because it's harder and harder to get crossing guards. All right, how can we construct these intersections to be safe when we can't get any crossing guards anymore?
I guess where my thinking is if there is something in the works further east of town, that'll require traffic studies, et cetera.
Yep,
We do something now, which is fine, but maybe 5-10 years from now, you're coming back and redoing everything.
taking
And
something
that's
out.
not the worst thing either, but it's just,
yeah.
yeah.
And I don't remember if I said this out loud when we were meeting, but kind of talking about leaving the right turn lane. And
Yep.
in my dumb head, ultimately, once that hits that point, that's a signalized intersection probably.
Yep.
I mean, it could be to the point where you've got Ridge Road all the way out both ways.
Right.
It's probably something like that. So let's hold that off with improvements as best we can for as long as we can until it's ultimately.
Well, when we were
Yeah.
doing N, we had that as a four-way stop through the summer for construction. I don't know what year this was when we did that. It was the greatest thing ever. But you've got heavy trucks that now have to go from a stop
Yep.
position to continue up the hill.
Yep.
In the wintertime, it's
And actually, yeah, it might not ever be signalized because of that.
Yeah. It was nice, but it
Yeah.
just was,
And if you do put bump outs in, I mean, creating a signalized intersection is fine if you only want to keep everybody like, you know, you don't want another right turn lane.
Yeah.
Or you don't, you know, you don't need a left somewhere or whatever. I don't envision that, but, you know, if you're coming north on Main Street and it'd be nice to have a little slip right so you can go to Taylor because there's a lot of development there, all of a sudden your bump out's in the way.
Yeah.
Because your parking would go away. The parking would go away, you know, 100 feet from the intersection because that would become your right turn lane, right? But now the bump out's in the way. So, I mean, there's a little bit of thought to that, JJ,
Yep.
as you kind of explore this is you are going to make an investment in it. And if you think, potentially if you don't get that north connection, which I know, Andy, I agree with you, you need that north connection out to the east. But let's say you don't get it right away because I think some of that development that happens out there is going to show a traffic study works. And they're going to show this intersection works for a while as you develop. And then they're going to come back and show this intersection works if it's signalized. And they're going to continue to build out there. And they're going to say, we agree, we need it, but not until halfway through all of this is developed. You can get, you know, I'm just throwing this out there, 100 acres of this developed, and we can still show and prove that that works. And we'll put a signal over there because we can't get rights to go north yet, right, for that connection. I'm making all this up. I'm hypothesizing, but
you see what has happened everywhere.
yeah, yeah.
If you move that one, the one that's there now up a little bit further, and then do the bump outs only for that,
Yeah, you could do that.
and still stripe the other one,
Yeah.
so you have, you know,
So here's
coverage.
here's a bigger picture question, I guess, for the whole group here today. You have the school that's halfway between Cottage Grove Road and Taylor and Willbridge, right? You have crossing guards, or you have in the past, I'm not sure where they exist now, but I know I've seen them at Cottage Grove Road and at Taylor. But then you also have a crossing guard right directly across from the school. Why are we crossing kids right directly across from the school? Why don't you require them at the two intersections to just go across and be on that side?
Because they go
That's
both
dream
directions.
world, yeah. But
Which one?
Well, there's that sidewalk that goes down the hill across from the school. I'm guessing that's,
yeah, they pop out in the middle of the
Right here,
block.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
The other major reason is you
Okay.
get parents that want to pull over on that side of the street and drop their kids off.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
yeah, I agree. I'm
It's-
just trying to think through the whole
All
logistics.
of which could be dealt with signage, absolutely. But I do
Right.
agree with what Josh was saying.
It almost seems like if you were to promote a crossing, you'd send everybody to one. Or you're either gonna bookend it and have it on both sides up there, or don't have the crossing guards there, just send everybody to that center crossing and promote the heck out of that center crossing. Everybody crosses at the center crossing.
Josh is coming to our meeting, Lisa.
Do you know what I mean? You need one crossing guard at the center. And if you're on, I mean, because the majority of the kids, well, if you're already on the east side, you're staying on the east side, you really don't need a crossing guard. But if you're on the west side approaching, you don't have to cross over at Wellbridge Road to get up to the school or at N to go over, because it's just the same distance if you go to the middle of the block and cross right directly at the school. There's no benefit in crossing early. Is there?
You're thinking like an engineer. This one's got, it's tricky with the, yes, you're not wrong.
I
I'll just-
think
yeah.
the benefit to crossing early is you got a bike path or a multi-use path on that whole side that
That's a good point.
you use much safer than doing that, staying on that 5-foot sidewalk to get to that center crossing.
Yeah. Yeah, I see it, Mike. Yeah, you're right. There's a multi-use path on the east side, so why not get them there as soon as possible, right?
In
You
my,
gotta think about like, you know, a 5-year-old too.
Yep.
I know. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm just talking and like, I'm trying to like figure out,
My
you know,
buddy's
maybe.
across the street, I'm gonna go.
Yeah,
Yep.
I want to go over
Yep.
there. That's where I meet my buddy.
Yeah,
and then
right.
think about that 5-year-old's parents who are calling the school district, then calling Lisa, and then we have to meet and discuss. Yep. They're gonna cross at all 3 spots.
Yeah, I don't think it's wrong to have 3 crossing guards. I'm just trying to like figure
No.
out, is there a way you can kind of combine all this? And maybe I don't think there is. You got a school in the middle.
Yep.
You got a school in the middle, and you guys pointed out, and I forgot all about that sidewalk that comes through all those backyards there that makes that connection too.
But by the end of next year, if these projects stay and keep progressing, I mean, we could have a much better crossing with the path down, doing whatever that looks like at the signalized intersection, and then improvements down at Taylor. I mean, again, we could have 2
And you already have the bump
significantly
outs,
improved
you already have the
spots.
bump outs at
Yep.
this one, which is very important, right?
Yep.
You know, you have We're
And-
talking similar stuff, down there. You
Yep.
already have that. You could have it on this side too, JJ.
Yep.
But I'm assuming there's some bus and there's some other things that you'd like to have a little more space
There's
inside.
some
as
queuing
people
there that
queue and
happens.
stack,
Yep.
which
Yeah.
I get why you don't have it there.
Yep.
Right.
But yeah, to the point of crossing guards in the future, someday, worst case scenario, Lisa can't get one applicant. We've got safer intersections north and south. Maybe that's a school district position that comes out there to
Yep,
that spot.
Yep. And I've seen that in places, right?
You build a bridge over it?
Is that our second
You
bridge
can.
tonight?
Put a tunnel underneath.
Sounds really expensive.
You could do the
No
same,
expense
you could do
spared.
the same thing down at the other one, only on the one side,
Yes. Yeah.
and save a little bit, save a little money and to make it easier for people that are turning right.
Yep.
To stay over, or if they have a trailer or something like that.
Yeah.
And it'd still be a lot better than it is today. And if you had a beacon there, even.
You have some
even more
beacons
better.
there too that also
Yeah.
allow people to get somebody's attention down
Yeah.
there. Okay. Well, we have some things to explore.
The other thing that would do is they're going downhill and then on the other side, it'll slow some
It'll slow
folks
people
down.
down.
Yep.
Yeah, it'll slow them down going downhill. Yep.
Yeah.
And the hard part is here too, you have these marked as, you can park in these, JJ, right?
Where are we exactly?
By the school and stuff. Yeah, they pull over and they park here, right? There's some parking in some of these.
Yep.
But it also acts as kind of that de facto bike lane. So as you can see here, smartly, if there is people biking and it is sort of a bike lane away from traffic, you don't just come all the way out to the edge of it. You allow people to kind of stay outside of traffic. Plus, if you have larger farm vehicles or anything oversized a little bit, you provide some distance. So we're not going to bring the bump out all the way. You're just going to bring it partially, as you're kind of noticing here.
Okay.
Okay. Good.
So
good.
you come back with a few
Yeah. Well.
options then?
Yeah. I mean, maybe
Sounds
not.
like 6 or 7 from what
Yeah,
we're
it
talking
sounds
about.
like about 10 options. Maybe not right away next month, but as we get through the summer, we'll kind of start to vet some of this and put some things together. Come back to the group, kind of work through it a little bit as we get into the end of the year. That's it. Sorry, my report was a little longer.
Sorry. Anybody else have any comments or questions on anything Josh talked about? All right, item 8, director's report.
Well, I guess you're stuck with me. Let's see. What has John not talked about? We did get the mold taken out of the old shop. Did we cover that ever? I finally got in there. It looks completely different. I was envisioning a lot of ways we could actually use it with a little bit of work on our part now. It's actually kind of exciting. I ended up talking to our utility superintendent, Dave, about, and we were both thinking kind of the same thing. So a little bit more functional space there. We can actually go back in and have people walk around in there now. Roof on Village Hall is new. We got a few more improvements planned for this facility. Sorry, I didn't have a report planned. Right now, it's replace John, try and get another great person in here.
Is the impeller on the tower working?
That is, yes, we did have that, yep, and I believe that payment was on last night's bills list. That project's all set, the mixer's working again, yep. Josh covered all the projects for the year. John and I sat for hours, like I said, with this project list, and what was in the bike ped draft plan there encompassed 99% of any capital projects that would have come out of us. So really, he's leaving us in a really good spot because we did an awful lot of work this spring to set us up for the rest of this year and the future. So I do want to thank John. I know he's not watching, but in his short time as director, he huge strides, and we're in a really good place. So we are going to miss him.
One thing, JJ, I could think about, and I don't know if John and you discussed this or not, we haven't discussed it, but the 2024 streets and parking lot projects did come quite a bit under kind of where because they're so large, we got some really good pricing. I thought John was gonna maybe look at, it could have used some more for some maintenance stuff and some other things, get ahead of a couple things that he might be behind on, and I know he was exploring that, but I don't think any decisions were made that I heard.
He had a pretty good plan put together. From what I understand, we're meeting tomorrow,
Okay, good.
and we're gonna see if he's got a bow on it or not. But he was working on it for sure.
JJ, I got a question.
Oh, right.
Did we ever determine why that north access to the Village Hall parking lot was sealed off?
No, I was hoping somebody from you or Andy from this committee.
You're
It's
gonna
been
say
on here
from
for
the
a
old
while.
guy committees, weren't you?
From, I believe Marty just told me anecdotally, a couple of resident complaints and overreaction is what Marty said. That we just got rid of it.
Okay.
But we're putting it back.
Good.
Yep. So Lisa, I think will be much happier come November when there's a little more of a flow here on election day.
That'll be completed by November?
Josh?
I think it's supposed to be completed 2 weeks after election. One more year, right? This is what you said?
We're already talking too much and now you're testing her.
She wants to complete it before the primary.
I feel like it was before the primaries, and I'm forgetting the date. Lisa, remind me, it was in the contract. It was before August.
August 13th.
Yeah, I think we had a like end of July completion date on it, so that we even gave ourselves a couple week buffer. Yeah.
All right, anything else? Item 9, set date for next meeting. June 4th work for everyone?
Sorry.
Yeah,
Okay, we'll
yeah,
go
it
June
should work.
4th, 6 PM. And item 11.
You want future agenda items?
Oh, that didn't show up on my paper. Yes, future agenda items. Any future agenda items?
We'll have the bike report
Yep.
to kind of be ready to
Hopefully
finalize.
final draft for one
Yeah.
final thumbs up on the bike ped plan. Hopefully by June 4th, at least an update on the director search. If not, maybe, gosh, we're gonna get to meet somebody new. Be optimistic.
There you go.
All right. Anything else?
Not coming to mind.
Okay. Then item 11.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second Larry's.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Non-debatable. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. All right. We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.